What's up, everyone? Just wrapped up and talking with New Zealander Canadian pop singer-songwriter, multi-instrumentalist Niki Kennedy. This newest episode, we talked her life growing up in New Zealand, being immersed in a diverse catalog of music early on, environmental influences, performing experiences, seeing Prince on tour, the rise of social media platforms, cover songs, vinyl collection, pop roots, gratitude towards supporters, plus music organizations, importance of embracing her career, and more. And now, with that being said, here's my conversation with Niki. Niki, hello.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming on the show today. It's it's a really cool thing to have somebody like your stature because you have a lot of, I guess, musical abilities to say the
Thank you.
least. Um and it's what really drew me to you was like I was watching this video of Sarah Bareilles doing She Used to Be Mine.
I love
And
that
then
song.
and then I came across your TikTok cover of She Used to Be Mine, and I said, this girl is unbelievable. You know, it's
Aw,
hard.
that's
It's
so
it's
kind.
it's hard to really pay homage to a song that's such I guess a song that speaks so much volume.
Mm.
And a lot of that is with obviously, you know, the Waitress, the musical, um, but what's interesting mostly is you have a lot of, I guess, musical genres that you categorize yourself in. And that's
Yeah.
the thing, you know, like I've always when I have artists on, I've always said that, you know, I really want to know what their genre actually is because when people say that they're country blues, jazz, or pop
Mm.
alternative, and then I kind of question myself, says, what are they actually? Because I don't know what to label them in the appropriate category. So let's start there. I mean, where do you put yourself in the genre spectrum?
I think you nailed it with the word spectrum because I do think that in general, I think genre is more of a classification. It's more of like a marketing and business term. I don't know, for me at least, that it directly relates to the art itself. So I always try and ignore it a little bit and create the art that I want, and then sort of go back afterward and be like, how do I classify this? But lately, and certainly in the last few releases, I've been defining what I do as like nostalgia pop. And for me, it's more about the essence of creating that feeling, as opposed to maybe the conventions that popular music have in itself. So for me, that's going back to the music that was popular um, when I was growing up. Um, and I think specifically looking at the 90s, I think it's interesting because a lot of genres were hitting the charts and there wasn't a clear cut definition of what popular music was. And I think if you ask anybody, sort of like, define pop music of the 90s, it's a little bit hard. And I kind of love that. I kind of love trying to create the art that we want to create and let the influences play in. And sure, I might not be a publicist or a marketer's dream in terms of having a clearly defined genre, but I think, humans are multifaceted and we feel different things and we want different things at any given moment in time. And I think to niche down too much or to strip some of the humanity from that doesn't quite work for me. So I always say pop because it's probably the most general and like doesn't have the specificity or some of the um, conventions or constructs required for certain genres like jazz and blues, and they're very specific. Country is another example of that. But I think contemporary genres in general, um, that's sort of where I like to pull from and draw from, and pop's just an easy way for me to sum that all up in one word. Also, like just clicking the button on the declassification for sure.
Certainly, certainly. And you feel like I like well while doing some research on what you kind of aim your music towards is it seems interesting that you are very immersed in the environmental aspect of feeling your music, I guess
Mm,
is the best word to use. Because a lot of the artists that I could chat with on this podcast, and I have chatted with, a lot of it has been, just recently had Hannah Blaylock on, and she's originally from Alaska,
Oh,
and
amazing.
she basically said that she was really immersed in the vast terrains of the wildlife,
Mm.
um, and being like in the mountainsides of things, and really immersing herself in the nature. And do you feel like with your music, does that ever come about in your music when you're really creating things?
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that Alaska is so cool too. I've never been, but it's on my bucket list. It's interesting that you say that. So I grew up in New Zealand, and I feel like that that's an important part of who I am as an artist because yeah, there is that connection to the environment that you grow up with, and I'm very, very grateful and lucky to have grown up in a country like that. And then when I moved to Canada, I actually moved to Toronto, which is industrial in nature, the condos and the metropolitan thing going on. And it wasn't until I moved out west to BC and I was back surrounded by water and mountains and all of these things that I really started to. Um, it's hard to explain because I was performing and I was creating in Toronto, but it was just a different thing that clicked. And I think that has a lot to do with the environment. And I think, especially given my upbringing, I think coming back to earth, if you will, and like really grounding myself as an artist and as a person and allowing the environment and the landscape to have an effect. I love being near the water. I love seeing beauty. I love trees. I love all of those things. And I don't know that I necessarily consciously think that it's playing a part, but I think it really does. And I think the fact that I've been creating more since I've lived out west is probably a good indication of that.
Absolutely. And you're residing in Vancouver currently, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's like there's been a lot of people and music stars now coming from Vancouver. Watching American Idol last night was just something to really I would say I was astonished by the talent that comes out of Vancouver because there were two. There was, oh man, who was it? I forget who the other lady was. But there was Tyson Venegas, who's just an absolute like Billy Joel type artist.
Incredible.
And then, there's this other artist, I think it was last night. I wasn't sure what her name was, but she was from Vancouver. And it's those things like that. There are superstars like Lauren Spencer Smith, who was from Vancouver,
Vancouver
and
Island, yeah.
now she's global stardom, right? And that's the thing. I feel like there are a lot of Canadian stars that are young that people don't know about, and then
Hmm.
they kind of like gradually work their way up in different, I guess, playing out in different areas, and then busking in different areas, and then someone sees them, and then they kind of refer to another person, and another person gets them, and then somehow they get into a managing type thing, and then the whole thing
Yeah.
unfurls. I mean, what's your aspect on that kind of realm, I guess?
I think like it's also interesting how social media is sort of playing into that now too. And like speaking of Lauren, obviously incredibly talented and certainly had a lot going um, for her even before American Idol. But then American Idol, but I think also the combination of that with her TikTok presence and the fan base that she was able to generate there, like that, I think also changed the game. And I think that's something, it's certainly something that I'm finding hard to adjust to. It's not natural for me at all. I'm trying, but I think that's kind of a cool development in technology and in the way that we connect with others and community. And suddenly it doesn't really matter where you are. You don't have to be in LA or Nashville or New York to be able to connect with people and build a community that really cares about what you have to say as an artist and then the music that you're making. And like even the fact that you said you saw the She Used to Be Mine like clip on TikTok, like that's mind blowing to me. That's so cool. Like I just that's maybe we wouldn't have connected otherwise. Like it's a really neat thing, and I think it'll change the face of not only how we find artists that we fall in love with, but also how people create content as well, and how that line between content and art starts to blur and merge. And there's always going to be pros and cons to everything, but I think it's a really cool thing that's obviously never happened before. So I'm excited to
Yeah,
kind of see how it plays out.
absolutely. And so how does that kind of connect into your musical household? Because obviously you're very clear on your music being um early on it was discos to R&B, Motown, and then pop music eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Where did that kind of come into play when it comes to your childhood, I guess?
I was so lucky and so fortunate to grow up in a household where my parents just love music, and so it was always playing. And I just always had such positive connections to it because, when my dad would put on disco music, we would like dance around the living room, and that was a beautiful thing for me as a small child. And then on the flip side of that, my mom would put on Whitney or Celine or Mariah in the car, and I would be wailing along to like the big, sad, emotional ballads as if I could feel all of those things at 6. And I think like having access to just great music and music that, regardless of whether it was a big ballad or an upbeat disco R&B number, made me feel good. And I think that's something that I've been chasing ever since. And I knew really early on that I wanted to make music and perform and have that be my life. That's never really been something that's ever changed. Um, but certainly in recent years, it's funny to kind of go back to those roots and be like, oh, like, why did I get into this? And how can I recreate that feeling both for myself and then hopefully for other people too? And it's a neat thing to sort of have some distance and go back and be like, oh, like how did that make me feel? And why did it make me feel that way? And for me, music has like been the one thing in my life that's always just been the best thing ever. Like I just love it so much. And it's always, whether I want to dance or cry, that is like my go-to. So yeah, now it's an interesting thing to come full circle and sort of be like, how can I do that for other people? How can I make that
Yeah,
happen?
absolutely. And with the artists that you were mentioning with your musical inspirations, was there a favorite song that you would choose from any of those artists? What would it be?
Ooh, that's tough. You know, that's so tough. But I think honestly, song, one song's hard. Okay, I'm gonna sort of not answer the question, but answer the question. I think one artist that probably is the reason that I started singing is Celine Dion. And I think if I had to pick a song, the song that sort of come up and been a constant for me in different ways over the years has been The Power of Love. But I think I would just kind of want to add on to that the Bodyguard soundtrack, Whitney Houston, was is still fundamentally like something that I really, really hold on to and love and go to for all sorts of inspiration, but namely vocal uh, inspiration, because I don't know that there's a better female vocal to have existed, and I know that's probably a fairly controversial statement, but Whitney is definitely probably my number one up there with Celine. So.
Absolutely. And I knew exactly what song you were going to choose from Celine, um, because I know you've covered that song
Mhm.
and that's the really cool thing. I think people like Whitney and people like Celine, they are just a generational talent that just cannot be matched.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's a hard thing. It's a very difficult thing to first and foremost, like challenge yourself to sing one of their songs.
Yeah,
Let alone pay tribute to what they've done in the music business already. Um,
1000%.
and I think that like I think a lot of your vision is very clear that you really embrace your music career. And I want to read a quote that you said about in an article about embracing your career because you're very clear on it, and it says, as cliche as it sounds, music just brought and still brings me so much joy. I took every opportunity to sing and create throughout my childhood. I'm really not sure I can remember a time where music wasn't everything. Was music everything for you and still is now?
Yeah. And I mean that like from the bottom of my heart. Like once I had it, once I found it, once it was something that was tangible for me, it, my world has never been anything else. And I was very fortunate in school. I had a lot of opportunities, like even like, five, six, those choirs, like all, anything I could do, instrumental groups, orchestra, like everything. I did it. And the first time I ever recorded was because it was part of a school album thing. I was 10, I got a solo, and it was just, it's always been the thing. And um, even now, you, being an artist is hard, and it's certainly not without its extreme ups and downs. And a lot of that has to do with stability and structure and all of that sort of stuff, because it is a job that is based in a gig economy. And I often, have tiny moments of thinking, maybe I need to do something else. And the crushing, like even talking about just the crushing feeling of that reality proves to me that I can't not do this, because it is, I have to. Like I don't have a choice. It is, I I'm made to do it, and I don't know what else I have to offer. I don't know what else I would do, but I it's worth it. It's worth the ups and the downs and all of that, and it literally consumes my life. Even when I'm not making it or performing it, I am 100% listening to it. Concerts are like my favorite thing. I have a huge vinyl collection that's like continually growing. I'm obsessed with consuming as much as I am creating, and I think that's an important piece of it too. It's not
Yeah.
just one-sided. I have this beautiful relationship with it. And yeah, I don't think I can stop.
Absolutely. Um, let's well describe your vinyl collection because like I have a vinyl collection as well here. And I listen to a lot of old soul songs. Anywhere from Kenny Rogers down to George Jones to Frank Sinatra to Bing Crosby. Those types of artists are me. I do have Lionel. I do have Lionel Richie. Lionel Richie is one of my all-time favorites.
Nice. I definitely have a Lionel record. I can't remember which one right now, but I definitely have one. I'll have to follow up with you and let you know
Was
what it
was
is.
was it the orange one?
I don't think it's the orange one. Oh gosh, I can't remember. This also speaks to the size of my collection. Also, how I acquired it makes it a little bit more.
Is it the one? Is it the one with hello on it?
I think it is the one with hello on it. Yeah.
Ah, okay.
Hmm. Probably overdue for a listen. I'll have
No,
to find some time for that this
honestly,
week.
there is no problem with having a Lionel Richie vinyl because Lionel is just the best, an absolute icon. And on American Idol, they don't call him Lionel, they call him Papa Richie.
Oh.
That like that's I've had contestants on from American Idol already, and I've asked like every single person, and I says, "Is Lionel Richie Papa Richie?" And they said, "Absolutely, he is
Oh. 100%.
100% Papa Richie." This guy is just he's basically like a father figure to them.
Oh, I
Um,
love that. That's amazing.
yeah, and so I think for you, you're very also appreciative for people who have supported you along the way.
Hmm.
How much of that kind of support is important in your career?
You know, I think it always takes a village, and um, whether I think that can take a different shape and form at different stages of your career, and for me, I think I've had some incredible opportunities and I've had some incredible support. But I'm still very much at an emergent stage, and so that support doesn't always come up in the form of industry, but it certainly comes up in people, and I think that's a really, really special thing. And I'm lucky to have been supported by my family and my friends, like that, obviously not the most conventional career choice, but I've always felt that support. And then certainly during the pandemic, I switched from performing live to performing online, and it afforded me this beautiful opportunity to meet people from all over the world and really connect with other music lovers and perform for them on a regular basis. And to have people who genuinely care about the music that you make and perform and want to see you succeed, that is the most incredible feeling in the world. And I don't think I'll ever take that for granted. And I don't want to ever take that for granted. And I think it's really, really, really important to keep those. I hate the word fan. It never feels honest for me, but to keep those listeners and those viewers front of mind always. And I'll always be really, really grateful for the what came out of a couple of hard years was something really special and something beautiful. And now I have this lovely, awesome community from around the world that I get to sing for.
Absolutely. And for certain, there's a lot of accomplishments you've already made in your young career. Selected as one of 28 participants in the 21 SOCAN Foundation TD Incubator for Creative
Mhm.
Entrepreneurship, semi-finalist in the 21 International Songwriting Competition, and the 2022 Unsigned Only Music Competition, long listed for the 22 Faith Nolan Music Award, won a finalist award in the 21 Lennon Songwriting Contest. Proudest, there's just so much accomplishments you've already made. Um, and obviously, you're very adamant on your appreciation for other organizations that have helped sort of launch other people's careers as well as yours.
Yeah.
Can I ask about the music counts and music yields type in
Yeah.
your career? Because it seems like you're a very huge supporter and an appreciative
Huge
person for
supporter.
those.
Yeah. So I think like one of the biggest things for me, in general, is I believe that music is a healer. Like I think it's medicine. I think it's magic. I think it's all of those beautiful things. And that's, obviously that comes from a place of how it makes me feel and how I've heard it makes others feel. And I just think that everybody should have access to it. And I think especially in the form of things like music education and music therapy, I just think access is so important. And I, in general, just don't agree that art should only be for those who can afford it. So I'm a huge supporter of those organizations for um, accessibility overall and the work that they do. And I have been able to contribute a little tiny bit over the years, and I think, when we can as a society prioritize arts in general, and of course, yeah, I'm a little bit biased and partial to music specifically, and we can ensure that the people that need it, whatever that looks like, whether it's education, whether it's therapy and healing, whether it's whatever it is, whatever just the regular person, I think if we can prioritize access to it, then culturally as a society, I think we'll be better for it.
Absolutely. And like the funny thing about programs and those things, I feel like there's been a lot of programs that have been cut. recently.
Yeah.
Even like for instance, I think when I was in high school, it was I'm a performer myself, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so I was trying. They had this thing called a vocal music class. Um,
Amazing.
and the thing was I was excited to see if I had any opportunity to do that. The only thing was they didn't have it in my years there. Um,
Oh,
and so as soon as I left, they brought it back. Um, which was unfortunate because I was really like excited to just try it out and see how it was.
yeah.
But now like I feel like people are realizing that we can't like cut these things anymore because I feel like art is a dying thing now. It really is. And like the same thing with like even though my love is for country music, I think that country music and whatever folk music, like Bob Dylan's music, it's a dying art. Like nobody's making that type of sounding music anymore. Um, and so there's also been a lot of contributions you've made in terms of appearances, I guess, performing experiences on CTV Morning. You've done Humber Radio or Radio
Hmm.
Humber, commercial radio support in Australia, and press for outlets such as Journal of Musical Things, Permanent Rain, Press, Vents Magazine, Vancouver Guardian, Audible Life, and more. And here's the funny thing. I am from Humber College. I went to Humber North for radio broadcasting
Oh,
just a
cool.
couple of years ago, and I was on Radio Humber. Um, and so I need to know what was that connection with Radio Humber?
So it's cool. So Radio Humber has been awesome in playing a couple of my singles now, but the specifically that opportunity was I performed I think it was around 40 minutes of live original material, which was super, super cool. And I believe that series actually started as a result of the pandemic. Don't quote me on that, but I think that's how it came about. So it was really, really cool. I worked with my incredible publicist, Carrie at Bad Parade. She's amazing and just the best human. But she was able to coordinate that for me, and it was a really neat opportunity to have that live sort of connection actually playing, even though I was promoting a new single. It was really neat to sort of strip everything back and have the opportunity to tell the stories behind the songs and approach them in a slightly different way, super stripped back, just me and my piano, and have that broadcast on air. It was really, really neat.
Yeah, absolutely. And like even being with Radio Humber for the years I was with them, like we were doing all sorts of different things. We did projects like we had to do I think 30-second spots for advertisements. We had to do I think it was what was it? It was a sports commercial write-up thing. So you would have to like write different jingles for sports or whatever you're wanting to do it for. And it's always a stressful thing to go through that. And so I feel like with Radio Humber, it's a really cool way to really get your music on there. And
Absolutely. Yeah. Like campus support, like college radio is we can't underestimate the value of it, especially for independent artists and emerging artists. Because obviously commercial radio is it's incredibly hard to break through and you need a big team in order to do that. So for independent artists to be able to get some airplay and get some support from college radio is incredible. So grateful.
absolutely. And so as we're wrapping up here, I want to ask you these last couple questions, and they are
Hmm.
really tough questions. I would say they're challenging,
Okay.
and has challenged every single person on this podcast so far. So here they are. So my questions are, what would you say is your most personal, immersive, powerful out-of-body musical experience?
Oh, that is a good question. Okay, I'm gonna go with the first one that comes to mind, gut reaction without overthinking. I was able to see Prince on his last tour. It was the Hit and Run tour where they announced the show the day before the tickets went on sale, and then the tickets went on sale the day before the show. I saw him actually only because of a friend of mine getting me a ticket. wouldn't have had the opportunity otherwise. I saw him at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday night in Toronto at a 2,500 seat venue, which for an artist of that size is, unreal to have that opportunity. And it was a no cell phone event. They had bouncers sort of saying, no, no, turn your phone off, put your phone away. So you had 2,500 people in a room, and I happened to get one of the hits nights. So he only played his hits, and you had 2,500 people, no phone, no distraction, 100% watching and engaged. And I've got goosebumps even talking about it. The energy in that room that night was incredible and magical. And let's be honest, I probably cried my way through it. It was absolutely just transformative. And I don't think I'll ever forget that. It was truly like an out of body kind of experience, but I had it with 2,500 other people, which I think is like the magical thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And here's a picture of Prince right now. This is
Oh
a
my goodness. Oh my gosh, amazing.
Yeah, that's a thing that I bought at the Canadian National Exhibition when they were open last summer. They
Oh,
have this
incredible.
posters place, and so they have all sorts of archived pictures of different legendary artists that you cannot find really anywhere else. Um, and so my last question to you would be, if you were to play a song with anybody who's already up in heaven, who would it be, and what song would you play?
Oh, okay. I have goosebumps again. Oh my goodness. That is an incredibly hard question. Oh my goodness. There's so many. There's so many people. Okay, well, I feel like based on our earlier conversation, I can't not say Whitney. I feel like I got to go with it. Oh, the song though. Oh, that's so hard. You're right. These are tricky questions. That's amazing. Let's say, just because, duets always sort of come to mind, I guess, in these situations. Let's say When You Believe, which she originally did with Mariah. Let's say that,
Okay, okay, I can dig that for sure.
because then we could sing it
I
together.
mean, okay, listen, we're not judging. We're not judging answers. Um, but yeah, I think that like obviously Whitney and Celine would be obvious like top of the list
hmm
artists for sure. Um,
Yeah.
I think like
Michael would also be up there for me.
it would
Uh,
yeah, Michael would be definitely up there. Um, I think like listen, I think a lot of people who have like answered these questions are like thank you for actually answering your own questions. Um, because like I will answer them honestly and truthfully as well. If I were to play a song with anybody, it probably would be, oh boy, I think Kenny Rogers would be
oh,
my
yeah, that would be
Kenny Rogers would be
incredible.
my all-time one. What song would I play? Oh man, I'm
Okay, the
really
song
looking
is hard, right?
I'm
Question.
like the song that I would probably do is Sweet Music Man. Because I think he was a music man. That's what he kind of lived his life by. It wasn't just, Kenny Rogers being Kenny Rogers. It was just Kenny Rogers and his own music that he created that inspired many people. Oh, and okay, here's another one I would do. If it were to be childhood idols, I would say Fred Rogers. Um, Fred Rogers, Won't You Be My Neighbor? Obvious top of the list.
Amazing. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I was
Love
just watching
that.
something last night about Fred Rogers, and that just came to my mind. And well, just what a great guy, and honestly, this has been an amazing conversation with you, and thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you for having me.
And so before we wrap up, we need to hear a little bit of that "She Used to Be Mine" rendition.
I don't know if you really want to hear it through my little pods here, but there is a full version on YouTube for everybody to check out.
Yeah,
And I've been very, very grateful for the love on that video and those clips, certainly, even on TikTok, which is amazing because I always
Yeah,
think that I'm just talking to no one there.
for sure, for sure. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. And to the listeners who made it this far into the episode, thanks so much for sticking around. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with New Zealand Canadian pop singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist Niki Kennedy. If you want to connect with her, you can find her on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and on TikTok. To help support my show, please feel free to share with family, friends, or on social media. You can find my podcast on all streaming platforms. I've been your host, Jigme Kelsang. Thanks for tuning into the show.